Thinking real estate.
Is that what we're doing today since Laura's not here?
Today starring Bill Schlechter.
Yeah, well,
Laura's lost in the fog.
apparently. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened to her. She said, when she called a few minutes ago, she said she was next to Kitty Cobb Market. You know, how far is Kitty Cobb Market from here?
I don't know. It depends where the cops are hiding over there.
Yeah, it could be.
Like,
Yeah, I don't know.
I got a police escort in last week.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay. Just trying to see if you were going to speed or something?
Yeah.
But you didn't get pulled over?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, no, I don't see that.
That when I'm
many.
going about
Oh.
22.
Is that what you do?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
You got to be careful.
Yeah, well, I
When
would.
you're traveling in my hours.
Yeah, and with deer, you mean?
Well,
And cops.
that and
And police?
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't speed anyway. You know, those days of speeding are long gone. There's no point to it. You know, you ever see the statistics about?
I always say,
Going
what-
faster.
you know, people pass you. Are you speeding to get to the next light?
Right, what's the purpose?
Yeah.
Right, and you're not saving that much time. Okay, so anyway, so
Yeah.
let's talk. Actually, since Laura's not here, we don't
Sure.
have to do a lifestyle show. But we could actually talk some. Oh, here she is.
Oh,
I was going to talk real estate contracts today, and offers and acceptances, offers, counter offers.
cool.
All that sort of stuff. But now that Laura has arrived, we'll let her dictate what her show's going to talk about.
Attitude.
I called.
No, not Artitude. Let's not talk Artitude.
I called you and told you what I thought.
Well, sales agreements, purchase agreements.
No,
Or-
well, there's a lot of. Oh, by the way, you guys sound good. I wanted to hear how the. I was late because I wanted to hear how the music and when
Oh.
you start talking.
how it all flows together.
Right.
So it came out all right.
In case I.
Don't you go home
So
and listen?
maybe we don't need
Well, I
you.
can't. You don't record
On the
it.
internet.
Oh, is it on there?
Well, you put it on the
You
internet.
put it
Oh,
on.
on mine. Yeah, I do re-listen
Yeah.
to that. Yeah,
Okay.
but it doesn't start. Jackie doesn't know when you start the music.
Oh, okay.
So that doesn't pick up.
So the music's better than the talking. Is that what she's suggesting, Greg?
Well, I'll know. I'll know when I start hearing the music that I shouldn't say anything.
All right.
inappropriate.
Okay. So what is it? What exactly?
Well,
are you
there's a
gonna
lot
talk
of people looking at commercial property right now in the community
How come?
about? That's a good question.
because it's bustling. It's people can feel that it's just starting to bustle. That's a good time to invest in it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
You know,
that's
there's
good.
quite a few buildings that have been on the market a long time that are getting offers in on them. And I was talking to a property owner, and she didn't have a clue that she should have an attorney involved, and it's a commercial transaction. And the difference between a commercial purchase agreement and a residential transaction or purchase agreement are so different.
Well, as Donald Trump would say, it's huge.
It's huge. And
It's great when I start quoting Donald Trump.
Good.
do you think he'll make Time Person of the Year?
Now, go ahead. So continue.
Anyhow.
Let's not get distracted.
Anyhow, so I thought that might be a good topic because as a realtor, primarily my business is residential, and we have a form that hits almost everything that could happen, and then we have clauses that we can turn to for those things that happen every now and then, such as contingent on the sale of a house or things like that. But there's been a couple of commercial transactions lately where there was no lawyer involved when that purchase agreement was written and when it was accepted and when it was closed. And I know one had ended up having contamination problems. This one is a possible land contract with the sale of goods. I mean, there's a lot of, just off the top
The
of my
sale
head.
of business, you mean, not sale of
Yeah,
goods.
right, sale of business, so now you've got to, put a security interest in on the items?
Well, not only
in
that,
case
you've
they
got a whole
default?
different agreement. You look, people will think that I'm just trying to generate business for lawyers. I'm a lawyer, right? So that's what I'm going to do. But I'm here to tell you that any person and any entity that closes a commercial deal without a qualified real estate attorney is nuts. Is absolutely nuts.
Right, well, and even
From
with
both
that.
sides, the seller not quite it's not as difficult from the seller side unless it's seller financing. All of a sudden now you have a whole host of issues. How many people do we know who have sold businesses in this community who ended up with the businesses back because the purchaser was not qualified either financially or in terms of operational expertise or skill.
Well, and when they get it back, what happens?
It's trashed.
Right.
Right. So my point here is a residential deal is, you know, even then, you know, I represent a few people in residential deals, but only if it's a large enough deal, or if there are particular problems, or if, you know, it's a zoning issue or a lake access issue or something like that.
So
but
do I-
commercial, you always.
Do I
always
do a
follow.
do I do a baseline environmental regardless of the type of property it is for
What's-
commercial?
It's not a baseline. Baseline environmental assessment is only applicable or appropriate where a property is what's known as a facility, which means it's contaminated with
Okay.
some hazardous substance at a level above residential permitted criteria, all right? So, the instant you have a facility, now you have a process in Michigan called a BEA, but let's not jump ahead of ourselves. In any non-residential deal, you're absolutely nuts as a purchaser
Okay, I
not
think
to
they got
have
that.
an environmental investigation.
Oh,
No,
okay.
that's different. You do what's called a phase one environmental
Right,
assessment.
okay.
If the phase one environmental assessment shows that there is what's known as a REC, a recognized REC, recognized environmental concern, and in many circumstances, depending upon the significance of the REC, the environmental consultant will recommend what's known as a phase two environmental investigation that's different from an environmental assessment. In the environmental investigation, actually, the environmental consultant goes in, takes soil samples and/or water samples and/or air samples. On a commercial deal, you would never, ever, ever proceed without at least starting with the phase one environmental assessment. And I see,
No matter what type of
no
property.
matter what, anything
So it could be an
non-residential.
office building.
Absolutely an office building. Look, I've been
Well,
doing
and
this.
what would you find in a phase one? You might find asbestos.
Well, no,
lead
well,
paint?
yeah, in a phase one with the
Right.
site inspection, you might find stuff like that, but usually in a phase one, what I'm looking for are adjacent properties or prior uses of the property, which indicate that there were hazardous substances stored, used, or disposed of on that property, or on adjacent properties, or, I've got a manufactured home community where the gas station is across the county road, and the gas station has had a leak from its tank, and they've documented that the leak has gone across the highway, and now is at least the border of the manufactured home community. So I can give you dozens and dozens of different scenarios that I've been involved in over the years in which the purchaser, fortunately, we have the environmental investigation or assessment or investigation is done, so we anticipate what those problems are. And then in 1995, Michigan started this program called the BEA to allow contaminated properties to be put into productive use. Michigan's the only state that has it, by the way. No other state has it.
All right.
So
They're in the
anyway.
forefront.
Yeah, but there are a lot
One
of
of
other
the-
things, a lot of
Well,
other
one of
things.
the comments from one of the people I've talked to recently was when they bought the building, I don't know how many years ago, let's say 15 years ago, I don't know, they didn't have an attorney involved at that point.
And anything happening now?
No. No, but they're getting ready to sell it, so.
All right. Okay. What kind of property?
uh,
What kind of use?
uh,
Office, retail, industrial, distribution,
This one-
warehousing,
This one's retail.
okay. Former gas station site,
Nope.
adjacent to a gas station? Don't know, do you? See,
Uh,
that's what an environmental
right.
assessment does, because they go back.
Well, and who knows? There might have been one years ago.
Sure, you
The
never
way
know.
they've repurposed properties, or I assume if they tore a building down, if there were contaminated soils, that would have been cleaned at the time of rebuilding a new building.
Maybe.
It depends on how long ago it was and what permits were lifted and what they did.
Well, when were
Did
they
own
really
the
start
property?
watching that? I mean, we did something up
1980
north in 90.
1986 is
Okay.
when the federal law was changed, the Superfund law, which was in existence before that time in 1986. There were amendments to it which created strict liability for anyone who buys property who does not conduct a due diligence inquiry into its environmental condition. And I mean, again, I've got dozens and dozens of cases where people bought property after 1986, when the law took effect, 1986 and thereafter. They bought properties that were contaminated back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Guess what? By virtue of that statute, by buying that property after the adoption of the Superfund amendments, by not conducting a due diligence inquiry, phase one or phase two, or both inquiries, they end up being liable for the cost of the cleanup of the property, even though they had nothing to do with its contamination.
So, but what if they bought the property prior to 86?
They're okay, 'cause there
They
was
tore
no,
down the building, didn't remove any
as
contaminated
long as it was before the
soils.
Superfund amendments, they're okay. As of the Superfund, that's federal law. Then the state law piggybacked on that beginning in 1995. Michigan law adopted strict liability as well, but federal law applies in most circumstances anyway. Now, the feds don't get involved in many contamination cases in Michigan because we have a strong DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, and we have a strong Environmental Act, the Michigan Environmental Protection Act, and a variety of other provisions in what's known as the NREPA, the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. So, yeah, but you're nuts.
as a
That's only
realtor, though-
one issue.
But as a realtor, would I ever, this is a rhetorical question, would I ever take a
I love those kind
residential,
of questions. Those are the easiest to answer.
or a residential contract and write it on behalf of a commercial property?
Oh, God, no. No, you would never use a residential agreement for a commercial deal, because it's.
And are there
comparing apples
standard
and oranges.
commercial forms? Like, can I go to
Um,
the internet and download a commercial real
You-
estate purchase
Yeah, you
agreement?
probably can, except every deal is gonna be different in one respect or another. It really is. And the concerns, depending upon the type of property, how it was used in the past, what it's near, those are all
Or how the
different
sale's gonna
aspects
be
of it.
structured, right? If it's
Well,
cash
that's what they-
versus
yeah,
land
yeah, I mean, I
contract?
was just dealing with the environmental aspect of it, but you could be dealing with zoning issues, you could be dealing with access issues, you could be dealing with security issues, financing issues.
In the city of Jackson, if it's been vacant 9 months or longer, you now have the
You're not
enforcement.
grandfathered in,
Right,
right? Yeah, I mean, there are a whole.
And that's probably true
almost-
in other communities, but I
And
know
if the
Jackson.
if the property's rented, if it's leasable property or it is leased, now you're dealing with existing tenants, you're dealing with review of the existing leases,
Or if
representations as to
the buyer's buying an online contract, do they have to worry about the debt that the seller may have?
Yeah,
as
absolutely.
well?
Well, sure, if there's a mortgage on the property and you're a land contract purchaser, matter of fact, I just got in the email, longtime client of mine, they're involved in this one where the property was sold back in 2009 on a 5-year or 6-year contract, must be a 6-year contract. And lo and behold, the land contract balance is due. They find out there's a mortgage balance which exceeds the land contract balance. Buyer didn't have a lawyer when he bought it. The company didn't have a lawyer when they bought it. Did it on a land contract.
Well, they would
And
have to know that they owe more than what they were gonna get on the land when they
The
sold
seller
it.
knew that, but the seller didn't care. Nobody bothered to deal with it. So now,
Yeah, but doesn't-
here's a buyer who's got a land contract payoff. There's a mortgage balance that's greater, and the seller's not going to pay it off. Seller doesn't have the ability to pay off the mortgage. That happens more frequently than you could possibly imagine, because buyers, they come in, they say, I want to buy it on a land contract. I don't have the ability to go get a mortgage. And so they go ahead and they move forward on a land contract without even thinking about that as an issue. So no, there are tons of issues.
I think you should call a lawyer.
Yeah, right. That's what you're
Laura.
supposed to do. But even then, I had a lawsuit here in which, and I won't say exactly where, but in which the lawyer ended up giving bad advice to the purchaser who invested over $100,000 into the property before the deal ever closed, took possession of the property, and lo and behold, the property, there were some issues with it that meant the sale never took place. And it just makes certain we
But that
go to.
person still put 100,000 into it and it never
Yeah,
closed?
that's
Why
right.
would you ever, why would it,
Ask the lawyer.
yeah,
Okay?
but
I'm just here to
wouldn't
tell
the
you.
lawyer be liable for giving advice, giving wrong
I'm not at
advice?
liberty to say the answer to that.
I mean,
question.
if
Yeah, look, my point here
And would,
is,
as a realtor, so thinking of that, so as a realtor, and I participate in a commercial sale, and I don't recommend that an attorney be involved in this transaction, do I have a liability issue?
well, yeah, the license law requires that every real estate licensee recommend to a purchaser of real estate that the purchaser retain legal counsel to review, to ascertain the marketability of title and to assure that the details of the purchase agreement are properly
But there's
carried
different
out.
ways of recommending that, so I could say to you, you know what, I think you should have an attorney, but we have the standard form. Or, hey, you know what, this is a commercial transaction and you've got some nuances here, you really need to have an attorney. Now, which one sounds more like you really need to get an attorney?
This is a rhetorical question.
I mean, but seriously, that happens every day in our industry.
Yeah, I'm sure it does, but you know, most of the
So
deals.
do I have, if I don't like, if I say, well, you know, it's the standard form,
Well, the problem is not so much, I mean,
I would be trusting my realtor
Right,
to
right, and you should trust your realtor,
Yeah.
but with that
to
said,
know whether a lawyer's necessary or not.
well, the law does require a realtor, a real estate licensee must make a recommendation. It's usually in writing, in the purchase agreement or in the listing agreement or buyer's agency agreement, that they recommend they retain a lawyer to, one, ascertain the marketability of title, or verify the marketability of title, and two, ascertain that the details of the purchase agreement are properly carried out. I'm saying that, I'm quoting that almost verbatim from the license law. The problem is that once the purchase
Residential.
agreement is signed, every deal, whether
Every
it's
deal.
residential or commercial, has to do with licensing of a real estate licensee.
the only thing I don't have to do as a realtor is agency disclosure for commercial property.
Yeah.
Only for residential, single family up to 4 family, right?
Right, 1 to 4 family residential properties, or even vacant land that's designed for 1 to 4 families. There's an agency disclosure
Other than
requirement.
that,
But for non-residential, there is no agency disclosure requirement. That's a whole different issue that apart from purchase agreements. But my point I wanted to make was that once purchase agreement is signed, everything that follows is dictated by the PA. And in a commercial deal, what you want to make certain is you get legal representation before you ink that purchase agreement. Or you make certain that the purchase agreement is contingent upon attorney approval, but then you just tick the other side off, because a lawyer's gonna come in, a competent lawyer's gonna look at whatever was drafted, and they're gonna have a conversation with the seller or the buyer.
So really-
They're gonna find out that there are different needs or concerns, and the lawyer's gonna say, no, this agreement isn't satisfactory, so now it ticks off the other party. I prefer they come to me before they ink the deal.
so, if they, as a realtor, if I come to you with what I call a standard form for commercial real estate, as the owner of the property or the buyer, you should think twice as to whether, and I should actually just be saying, we're
Yeah.
gonna do a letter of intent, and the attorney's gonna draft the,
I don't even like
Like
letters
that.
of intent. Letters of intent all too often are treated as binding agreements. I've got one right now in an industrial
but it
site.
could say this is not a binding agreement. I mean, a
Yeah.
letter of, how do you initiate the purchase of a commercial property if you don't have something in writing that says, I'm serious and committed to do what I can to make this happen under
Yeah,
certain
we do it,
circumstances.
and we do it in larger commercial leases. We do what's called a term sheet, where we list what the terms are. There it makes great sense. I don't want to go through the hassle of doing a complete lease. Purchase agreements, you can do a letter of intent, basic terms, you got to make absolutely certain that it says this is not a binding agreement upon either party, is subject to review, approval of attorneys, and the drafting and execution of a comprehensive purchase agreement. And that's, again, almost verbatim the language you would put in a letter of intent. Just got to
Okay.
make sure that, and make certain that nobody does anything in reliance on it. Or
Okay.
they don't start spending money.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's happening. Artitude is Tuesdays through Saturdays, 11 to 7. And we had a great weekend this past weekend with Kids Weekend. Santa came and Steampunk Eddie was there and several artists doing make and takes. And Downham Center was there yesterday. And Sundays were open 12 to 4. We are starting this Tuesday, which would be tomorrow, having alcohol and art. That's what I'm going to call it. Jackie calls it happy hour. From 5 to 7, come have a glass of wine, a beer, and peruse the art. Pull out your wallet, spend a little bit of money for our local, almost all local artists. December 16th, we have the Cascades Humane Society coming during lunch hour, 11 to 1, and come adopt a puppy, and there'll be artists there that deal with gifts for animals. Thursday, December 17th at 6 p.m. are the Young Professionals are meeting there. And Saturday, December 19th is Food Artisan Day. I have a hard time with that word. Food Artisan Day, and we're looking for a wide variety of local food. So you can call 780-3800 if you're interested in that. We have Frankie Yee is confirmed with his salsa. And the house of the day is 805 Southwest Avenue, a very cool tutor, 159.9, 4 bedrooms. and it's over 2,500 square feet. Call 780-3800.